See, can you just check?
I would request Mr. Arnob Basu to please commence the session.
Good afternoon, and this is a program which is very close to my heart. I think, firstly, I would like to apologize for coming in late. Kolkata was not like this for the last 2 years. You could pretty much predict when you will reach somewhere, but today it was possibly a day where I couldn't predict. I took probably almost close to 2 hours from Salt Lake to the Bengal chamber, and hence I couldn't be here to host the program when it started. Thankfully, we had Mr. Radhakrishnan who was here to, sort of welcome you all. But it is my great pleasure. This is the 13th year of the 13th edition of this event. And to some extent, it has become very close to our heart. Over the years, we have tried to see that, while we call it the Business IT Conclave, we really discuss some serious IT topics in this program. And when we were thinking as the IT committee that what are some of the topics we would talk about, 5G, which is this session, was the topmost talked about item, and we felt that this technology and what it means for India would have to be something which we have to discuss this time. There are a few others, both today and in the next session. You would find that we are talking about cloud in a big way. Cloud continues to be unputdownable in some ways. But we are also talking about the digital currency. We are talking about the metaverse. So some interesting aspects would come in. But to start with and to get this, conversation very much tech-oriented, we have the session of 5G as the main session to kickstart our conversations. Niladri, it's over to you to moderate. Please don't ask me any questions because I'm not a 5G expert, and you know that. You have the other experts in the panel with you. But of course, it's a great pleasure to host all 4 of you. Thank you for making time for this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope I'm really audible to all of you. It's a privilege and an honor to be sharing the dais with all of you here. Before we start off, I think we are all pretty much in the learning curve as far as 5G or emerging technologies in telecom is concerned, because 5G is kind of a semi-black box for many people in the industry, especially when it comes to the applications and the use cases that are going to be rolled out in 5G. So we are all pretty much learners of the technology, what we call as 5G. Yes, it's being implemented in some parts of the world, but I happen to work in a company which makes 5G at the very heart of its own business. I work for Ericsson, so yes, 5G is a reality in some parts of the world, but the applications of 5G is still very much emerging. So what we'll do in this next hour, 45 minutes to an hour, we'll try to make the discussion a bit more interactive with all of you. We'll try and make it a bit more provocative so that it's more interesting and it's not just a boring monologue. We'll share some perspectives. We'll look at the demand side of the value chain, which essentially comes from the operators world. And I'm fortunate to, have representations from 2 operators, Tatacom and British Telecom, who will be joining from UK. We'll also bring in the tech side. And when I say tech, I would try to emphasize on 2 aspects of tech. One being the vendor side, the other being the software and the solutions and the services side. And they all form a conglomerate of what we call as the 5G ecosystem. So we'll try and cover each aspect and we'll focus on some of the specific use cases, and especially you, Dr. Radhakrishnan, looking at what IIT Madras has been doing as a test bed. So we'll try and touch upon, and we'll then open up to the house for any kind of questions that you may have for us. But to start off, I'll request Mr. Ramaswamy to kindly begin with his presentation, and followed by that, we will start the panel discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Bengal Chamber of Commerce, for inviting me over for this presentation. I've tried to keep this as simple and less technical as possible, and trying to focus more towards what it does for business rather than talking about the technology in itself. However, I thought it may be a good idea to start off with a little bit about the background of what 5G is, and some part of what I wanted to cover was already done by Dr. Kocher before. However, let me take that liberty to introduce you to the technology a little bit, and then get on to see what it does for enterprises, what it does for businesses in general. And so my focus is going to be what 5G does for enterprises. If you look at the last about 40 odd years, every 10 years there has been a generation of mobile telephone technology that has sort of come in, starting from the early 80s, right? But let's focus on the last 3 generations. In 2000, world over, we got 3G as a technology. In about 2008, 2010, we got 4G, and now 2020, we have 5G as a technology. The key thing is, the reason why I took from 3G is because that's where the data thing started. So you had mobile internet, some messaging, some browsing capabilities that came in with 3G, and data became the center stage in 4G, because even voice was carried as data when it came to 4G, and a huge revolution that happened on smartphone that came in. So 4G was sort of, I would say, a trial bed where various people in the ecosystem, enterprises, providers, consumers, application developers, all of these people started, even governments started testing what this mobile technology can do for their businesses, for conducting their own operations and things like that. So with that, it was sort of proven that mobile communication will become something very center to, to their own business. That is, the communication technology will become the bedrock on which you build your businesses. That's what sort of 4G sort of showed. But then inherently there were certain capability mismatches within the 4G technology which were to be rectified. And like Dr. Kocher said, there were a few additional capabilities that comes in as a part of the 5G network. The other important point is like what Dr. Kocher said, B2B becomes the most important characteristics of 5G technology. One, from a monetization point of view, whether the operators will make money or not make money, that's one point. But more importantly, it's not looked at as just as another faster way of communication. There are a lot of inherently other features that are being developed as part of the 5G technology, and you can leverage that for your businesses. And let me give you a disclaimer here, and I'm sure that Niladri will agree with me. This is just begun. The standards are still evolving. There is still a lot of way to go for us to make all of these things happen. So some of what I'm saying now could be a little bit of a future gazing. It's not something that's, not all of them are right here, grounded, having been done and dusted. They're all a little bit future gazing. So if you want to look at what are those key characteristics of 5G, speed, of course, that is what we expect from 3G to 4G to 5G. So you get a peak speed of 20 gigabits per second, and probably an average speed of about 100 Mbps plus between multiple devices that are there on a network. So, that's important, higher speed, that's fine. But the other two are the most important parts of what 5G can do. reliability is one key thing. So far in wireless technology, in mobile technology, like what they could do in a fiber or a fixed line network, an operator wouldn't have been able to give you a promise of a reliability, an SLA, right? Whereas in 5G, the network can potentially help you deliver a reliability, can help you deliver a very low latency of communication and things like that. We'll see later on why all of these things are important. And also, it can also provide you a very high mobility of the order of 500 kilometers per hour. These things are very useful when it comes to the type of use cases that enterprises will start doing based on 5G technology. And finally, very high density. You could pack as high as 1 million devices per square kilometer. And also 5G promises to be extremely energy efficient. There is still a long way to go for us to reach that though, but it's expected to be extremely energy efficient. So speed, reliability, mobility, and then density are the 4 key aspects that are useful to build use cases on top of 5G network. So, let's look at what consumers can do with it. And this is not much important for this context, but each one of us is a consumer. Hence, let's look at, we could probably do bidirectional content streaming over a period of time. Various applications, various social media, apps have started also enabling what is called as uplink, or going from the device to the network or to the cloud, right? So you require now just not only downlink, you also require a very good uplink. Hence, bidirectional content streaming is something that is feasible with 5G. And of course, AR, VR, mixed reality type of experiences, high-speed cloud-based gaming, and a very highly immersive sports experience. These are some of the consumer-specific applications of 5G. But that's not what we are here for. So let's look at what happens from an enterprise. GSMA says something like 13.5 trillion would be the type of economic value add that will happen because of 5G by the year 2035. In about 10-12 years from now, 5G will enable about 13.5 trillion economic value add, right? And for this, enterprises are the key drivers. And there is a concept called 5G private networks, which also become an inherent part of this economic value add. And there could be a GDP upside of about 2 trillion by 2030 from just 4 industries. You could see the 4 industries in the slide. Retail, about 500 billion, manufacturing about a similar size, and mobility industry, and mobility and logistics and that part put together, and finally healthcare. So these 4 industries are expected to drive a GDP upside of about 2 trillion by 2030, right? And that's what enterprises can do and can benefit from 5G. So I'll want of time, I'll just skip through some of these things. But I wanted to bring in a concept called a private network engine, which is very much an integral part of this economic value add that 5G is expected to bring. A mobile network provider builds a network, gets a spectrum from the government, builds a network, and then all of us start connecting to it, start using it. That's a public network. But 5G also brings and opens up a concept called private network, which is set up inside campuses. If you are running a manufacturing unit, if you're running an hospital, if you're running a mine, and you need to connect various devices and enable Industry 4.0 or digitalization efforts within that, you could set up a private network. So private network is typically built within the campus by the enterprise themselves, use an industrial spectrum that is provided by various governments in each country, and then set up that network and connect all the applications like, industrial IoT, maybe PLCs, maybe video streaming, maybe robotics, and all of that that's essential for that particular enterprise to run their business. I'll just take a small example of what happens in manufacturing. Various applications, and I'm not going to go through each one of those. I've listed down a few applications that can come in manufacturing because of 5G, starting from video based applications like surveillance, quality control, and various other things, by bringing in robotics, automated guided vehicles, industrial IoT, connecting machineries to a central command center. So there are lots and lots of applications that can potentially happen inside a manufacturing unit using a private 5G network. And if you take a private network and a public network as a continuum, so you can look at what happens with the life of a, let's say, a car. From the time a car is designed, it is manufactured, it comes out of the factory, and then that's on the road all the way till its end of its life and then getting dumped. This entire cycle, life cycle, there will be a continuum on what happens from a 5G private network perspective. Oh yeah. Oh.
Apologies for the technical glitch. We'll be back in a minute.
Sure. Done? Okay. I'm sorry about this. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Now it's in sync. Yeah, you can go.
Yeah. I'm sorry. So there were some content on the slides which I was sort of referring to, and because of paucity of time, I'm trying to,
That's fine.
push things together. And sorry about that. So I was just last talking about a smart manufacturing in action. There are multiple use cases that I mentioned in this particular slide, starting from video analytics, using robotics, automated guided vehicles, central command center for the entire manufacturing process, and so on and so forth. And if I take the manufacturing automation, 5G applications within manufacturing, and then add it to what can happen in a car, and create that as a continuum from design of a car all the way it getting manufactured, going on the road, and then towards the end, it sort of, the life ends and then you discard the car. That entire life cycle, there are lots of actions that can happen because of 5G. Now, within the factory, the entire life, the process of manufacturing the car. I was just told by one of my colleagues who's in the car manufacturing industry that there are about 15 to 20 computers that are there currently in any car. For each part, there could be a different microcontroller or microprocessor which is doing things. So each of them carry a software, and all of these software need to be pushed into the car. And typically with 4G type of technology, you'll have to take it to the garage, and then the software needs to be upgraded. And with 5G, I'm just giving you some examples of what all can change because of 5G. In 5G, what you could do is you can push the software over the air. As the car is moving, the manufacturer of the car can push the software change over the air, the way that we do software upgrades on our mobile phone, right? That's something that is, so this can do quite a lot of new use cases can be built, using 5G in a manufacturing place. And there's another example where we can do use cases in retail and warehousing. Again, very similar stuff, video, robotics, automated guided vehicles, drones, and all of those type of examples, asset tracking, using computer vision, all of these examples on using a private 5G network set up inside the warehouse for running all of these applications. To me, adoption is not a choice. It is only the question of when, right? Lots of industries, mines have been using private networks for a very long time, maybe tens of years already. And from there, recent adoption has been triggered by automotive manufacturers, particularly people in Germany. And then ports, sports venues, all of these people have also started adopting 5G network. I'm not at liberty to share names of these customers, but we know for sure various customers, and probably Niladri can give some examples. Ericsson has done a few of these as well. And all of these, wherever these implementations have been done, there is a proof that the returns have been achieved. And people who do not probably get into it sooner than later, there could be a lost opportunity to digitize your process, to digitize your entire enterprise using 5G as a lever. So 5G now becomes sort of a base on which you start building quite a lot of applications. So, I'll not do too much of this. Tatacom does private 5G networks, etc. Okay, I'll not talk about it much. And then finally, just to conclude, it's fast evolving. There's a huge innovation opportunity. I would say that probably you shouldn't be spending too much, enterprises shouldn't be spending too much time waiting for things to happen. Probably they have to start immediately and partake in the potential upside that 5G can provide. And, you can, each one of you is a part of an ecosystem. You could play a significant part in the way that 5G would drive that 13.2 trillion in 2035. With that, let me sort of stop and then leave the floor.
Why don't you come and join us for the panel? Thanks, Mr. Ramaswamy, for those interesting insights. It's not just what Tatacom is doing. I think most operators across the globe are doing pretty similar things. So what we will do is we'll try and relook at the recent past a bit, right? So the evolution of 4G, transitioning 4G into 5G, and then we will look into, as I said earlier, when I set context up, we'll look into the demand side of the equation. So I believe, Dave, welcome to the panel. You're joining us from the UK. Hope everything is fine. So we'll look at perspectives, what the operator, CIO, CTO imperatives look like. Then we'll look at, what the vendor perspective looks like, what is going to be really achievable, how much of that becomes a reality, or is 5G is just a wish list, right? So we spoke about connected societies. We spoke that the world is not going to look the same. Everything depends on commercialization. Everything depends on adaptability and ROI. That's the hard truth of the industry, and none of us can escape. We are all actors or entities within the value chain across demand and supply. So we'll I'll take you in the past. When you look at transitioning from 4G to 5G, how many of you really believe that 4G was a success across the globe for operators? Like, just a raise of hands, if I may ask you as an open question to the audience. Do you really believe that 4G was a successful technology for operators across the globe? Anyone? Do you really believe so? Yes? You do believe 4G was successful. All right. Any others who would like to have a contrarian view to that? All right. 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 Okay. Okay. So let me rephrase the question a bit. So some of you would have a mixed opinion about 4G being successful. Some of you would believe 4G was not as successful because it was not really impacting the user experience, what you saw in a 3G smartphone and a 4G smartphone. So let me just redirect the question in a different way, all right? Just to make it a bit more interactive. How much do you think a typical telco operator uses in terms of its overall total network capacity? How much of the network, I mean the fiber out there, for a typical tier 1 telco, any telco which is a tier 1 telco across the globe, across geographies, what do you think is the typical range where a typical network of a telco provider is really put to use? How much of it? Is it more than 50% or is it less than 50%? Just as a wide guess, if I may ask you. Any idea of the range? How much will it be? All right, I'll give you a number. So it's about 45%, right? At the max, it's still not more than 50% across the globe. 4G in reality was not a very successful business case for any operators. You name a tier 1 operator, they haven't made money out of it. For multiple reasons. They were abrupt, fast changing, not really organic when it comes to adaptability. So basically the technology was there, but the organization was not up to the same pace. So therefore, 4G from a business case perspective was not so successful. From a consumer experience perspective, yes, it enhanced the speeds. It definitely gave better user experience in some parts of the world. May not be in India because of the density, but definitely in some parts of the world, 4G was a success. Now, when you go from 4G to 5G, it's really based on 3GPP standards, right? And that's where I want Professor Radhakrishnan to jump in and walk us through this whole transition journey. And whatever I've just shared, if he has a different opinion to that. How did this happen, and why did this happen, and how did this all merge together when, International Telecommunications Union, or ITU as we call it, decided to converge everything with the advent of 5G? Over to you.
So thank you first for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here and speak among business leaders. I mean, first a disclaimer, I'm an academic. My background is academic, but I'm lucky to be involved in 3GPP standardization from the last 6 years. I have been participating in 3GPP, ITU, and was lucky enough to even build this 5G system. Yeah, so with this, so 4G was all about data. Okay, so 4G was all about data, and as time progressed, what happened was there were a lot more use cases that were coming to 4G. People wanted to do IoT, people wanted to control their machines using 4G. A lot more use cases were coming to 4G, which it was not designed for. That's where ITU stepped in. ITU said that, okay, now it's time to evolve to the next generation standard. It got all the stakeholders together, came up with, use cases and KPI. Okay. It said that this is the vision for 5G. 5G is also called IMT2020. The technical name for 5G is IMT2020. So it came with the saying that it should have this speed, it should have this latency, it should satisfy these many million devices per square kilometer, and so on and so forth. So many KPI, 14 KPI to be more precise. Okay. And then they said, it was ratified. It was ratified by all the governments of the world. And then 3GPP stepped in. So 3GPP is the body which develops the technology or the standards to meet these requirements. ITU sets the requirements and 3GPP develops the standards. So about 6 years back is approximately 6 years back is when 3GPP stepped in, saying that we will build the standard. And all the companies across the world and countries, a lot of institutions participated in that, including a lot of us from India. There was a huge rush for 5G, believe me. And those who have participated in the standards will understand this. And they came up with this wonderful standard called, which they termed it as 5G. And then it went to ITU for ratification. Okay. And finally, ITU ratified this in about a year and a half back was when it got termed as IMT 2020 was ratified. I just want to add one thing to this journey, maybe just to spice things up. So in ITU, when 5G was being, the IMT 2020 was being formulated in ITU, India also went with a certain requirement, saying that rural connectivity is an important factor for this, large range connectivity. Okay. So there has been a lot of push from the government of India, as well as academia and industry also, saying that 5G should not only serve the urban areas, but also have a big footprint in the rural area. So they have started something called LMLC use case, low mobility large cell use case was introduced in ITU by India for the first time. Most of you won't know, but India had its own 5G standard called 5G-I. Okay, 5G improved actually. So it was 5G plus a rural enhancement that later got merged into 5G because General Kochar and all these guys were also, a lot of people were involved in doing this. But we had an very interesting and explosive journey for 5G in India. Finally, 3GPP is the one which sets the standards. Okay, there's only one global standard called 5G, which is set by 3GPP.
Thanks, Dr. Radhakrishnan. I'll now, go to Dave. David, I believe you're able to hear me, right? If you can just.
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you loud and clear, Dave. So the question here is, you are basically representing British Telecom, and I think it's one of the oldest telecommunications providers globally, with the likes of AT&T and Vodafone and others. So Europe has been pretty slow when it came to uptake of 5G, and I speak that from experience as well when I interact with some of the European customers, in comparison to markets like North America or maybe South Korea, Japan. Any specific reason that you may foresee? Why is the hesitancy of adapting 5G or adapting 5G late in the game when it comes to Europe as a market? That's the first question. And a follow-up to that is, what is different in terms of the strategy that BT as a company is adopting now with BT Digital also in the foray, that you envisage that's going to be a game changer going forward, especially when you look at the enterprise side of the story with 5G?
Okay, thank you for your question, and thank you for having me here on the panel today. I guess, first of all, to address your question about kind of speed to market, I think you find Europe launched 5G 3 years ago in 2019, pretty much the same time as American operators, Korean operators. I think it's fair to say that Korea, the US, has had an advantage with maybe some of the spectrum capabilities they have to allow them to actually grow faster. But one of the key differentiating factors is almost the physical ecosystem, access to buildings, access to good quality fiber, and having all of those kind of capabilities together is what allows you to actually accelerate the 5G growth. For BT itself, we're currently the first operator, the UK, to go beyond 50% population coverage, and we're driving that pretty fast. And we very much made a statement that we would complete our 5G rollout nationwide to the edge of our country to be available, accessible from everywhere by 2028. So I think things are leveling out, and I think the ambition there is certainly from Europe to progress at a similar pace as well. In terms of the kind of digital ambition, I think what we would say is I personally see that 5G is absolutely the digital backbone for the country. You know, this will be a key digital transformation enabler for industry, which will bring kind of great new services and a whole range of new services. I think what we've heard, you know, the standards have been very good this year with the 5G standards of actually engaging directly with industry, and industry directly with the standards as well, to ensure that, you know, the future capabilities or the requirements of those industries actually comes to the forefront. But I fully agree that, you know, the reliability, the speed, the performance, I would also add the security are all key factors that will help enable the kind of 5G ecosystem to come through. In terms of the position around digital, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's very important for telcos. You know, you talked about a very long history, and, you know, BT can trace its history back to the 1800s, and we were the first nationwide kind of telco provider in the world back then. But it's important now that we actually look forward to the future in terms of digital services. We've recently formed a new digital division with a very specific focus. Before, we had a combined digital and networks function. We've separated the two. The networks team can focus on fiber, 5G, and the digital team can look at the kind of modern transformation of new services, platforms, and products and services, which will actually allow us to kind of coexist and drive forward this kind of, you know, the 5G services in the modern world. And what we see really as part of that is, you know, a significant shift where we actually kind of need to kind of think about how we develop platforms and how we integrate those into the network. If you look at it two ways, there's one thing, the services being able to interact with the network. Networks, 5G networks are programmable. They're instantly programmable. They're designed to serve the needs of the enterprise customer when they want it, and that can adapt in real time. So you need to be able to kind of integrate both the network with the service, with the platform. As an operator, as a telecoms operator, we need to move up the technology stack, basically from delivering what has been a lot of connectivity in 4G through to actually providing more vertical specific platforms, and as the way basically to start unlocking kind of future value, both for us, but also kind of our customers. And as part of that, you know, we're very much driving, you know, product specific services. We're focused very much around health, around government, around transport and logistics, and we're focused very much on on trying to build significant amount of use cases and proof of concepts in that space to actually start driving and enabling the wider ecosystem to actually bring businesses on board, work in partnership with us, and actually look to what the future of these 5G services could be.
Thanks, David. I think I kind of echo a lot what you just said. And I think Ericsson has been at the forefront of the private 5G network rollout together with BT in the UK. So I think that's kind of a significant milestone for both of our companies. Coming to the whole realization of 5G, there's a whole new ecosystem that we keep hearing about this term. I think that's been very popular and been used widely across the industry since the past 3 odd years, I must say. So let's look at how to build that ecosystem, right? So if I have to divide 5G as a technology into 3 different pillars, the way I would see it is a platform layer, which is obviously including the network infrastructure that you need, and we all have spoken about it. Then comes the larger pie, which is completely untapped and unutilized, where anybody and everybody can have a fair share of the revenue, which is the services pie, which includes application and services together. So you have platform, application, and services, and the real untapped opportunity is application and services more than platform. And that's a reality. Having said that, this is also kind of a black box. So it's kind of a chicken and egg situation at the moment. And that's where operators are in a state of flux of where to invest, how to invest, what would be the low-hanging fruits in terms of use cases. If you look at 5G, there are basically 3 main pillars. You obviously have the enhanced mobile broadband, or what we call as EMBB. Then you have the ultra reliable low latency, which is URLCC. And then you, of course, have the massive IoT, or what I call as MIoT. Now, when you look at enterprise, this is my personal view, of course, that I would like to believe that URLCC and MIoT would be the drivers of industrial automation, driving towards Industry 4.0 use case realization. And enhanced mobile broadband will still be a bit more consumer focused, which is B2C. However, if you want to realize more money and make greater ROIs for the operator, the B2B is of supreme focus when it comes to realization of 5G, for the simple reason is acceptance and change of society at large. If you look at the revenue split today in most telcos between B2C and B2B, it's still very much at the low 20s or maybe around 15 to 20% when it comes to the enterprise segment. Any tier 1, any geography, hardly it is crossing 20%. But when you look at the consumer segment, most telcos are having more than 80 or 85% revenue coming from the consumer segment. And that's fundamentally going to change with 5G. With 5G, it's going to be that 85% number is going to come down to maybe 65, 70, and that's the target. And this enterprise number, which is right now hovering between plus minus 15 to 20, is going to go up to 35. And that's the game changer. And that's why you talk of industry and society and adaptability of use cases driving enterprise automation and so on and so forth, where cloud, AI, big data all will play levers to this entire transformation. So with that ethos, Mr. Sanyal, you are representing a company. Do you really believe that, out of these 3 towers that I mentioned, you also would like to have the same point of view in terms of the use cases that your company would be driving with regards to 5G, or you have a difference of opinion when it comes to adaptability of 5G use cases, especially the low-hanging fruits that you foresee?
Basically, I am from a power distribution utility. We are looking at a great opportunity for 5G because in 4G no operator has given any SLA. That is the major problem. Any operation, any automation, it requires an SLA for its successful implementation. So SLA is one of the things which 5G possibly will provide. That is one thing. And second thing is reliability and low latency. It is very much required in today's automation practice because everything will be, all the data will be coming from the sensor and immediate action has to be taken. And in the process automation or manufacturing automation, some concepts are coming like collaborative robot. So robot will work in hand with the human being. It's calling cobot. So it requires an efficient, reliable and lightning speed communication for the process and system. So whatever you have told, it's something like that, because we have not ripped out the 4G. And another thing is advanced planning is required for implementing 5G, because 4G has crossed almost 10 years, but in our country, all the smart meter and AMR still are running on 2G. So planning is required. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. So I'll just come back to you, Dr. Radhakrishnan, once again, and then I'll come back to you, Vishi. So with regards to this whole changing culture, adaptability, how much do you really think in terms of, you represent IIT Madras, right? So I keep hearing, I was in a panel 1 week back when I heard that IIT Madras has been very closely associated with some of the likes of AT&T and others, where some of the use cases are being incubated in the 5G Innovation Lab. I would be very intrigued to hear those use cases and which segment they belong to, and how much of readiness from an operations perspective do you think that industrialization of those use cases are possible for the operators to take them live?
So, hello. So in IIT Madras, we have built the 5G test bed. Okay, so the main goal was to enable use cases so that people can come and test their use cases, among other things. So currently, the use cases that we are focusing is on smart meters, or water meters and electrical meters. That is one use case. And the second thing is, of course, video monitoring solutions. Okay, specifically in the campus kind of a network where laying fiber is becoming a bit more difficult. So one big use case of 5G is it's a replacement. At least it was theorized that it should be a replacement of fiber. So where is 5G with respect to all these use cases? Okay, currently at least my understanding, this is my personal understanding again, there has been a lot of hype about 5G. Okay, we have to agree with that. So 5G bottom line is a big data pipe. It provides good latency. It can provide you SLAs. Okay. From the technology perspective, that's what it is. Okay, who implements it, how you do it as an enterprise network or as a telecom, that's a different thing. But how do we use it is the main question. That is where all the businesses are going to make money out of it. The data is not going to be the money part of it. It's the use case of use of this kind of this infrastructure is where it's going to. So what I believe is that the data part of things is very mature. The EMBB, what he has mentioned as EMBB, is very, very mature. The reliable and the low latency communication, still there's a lot more work to be done. It will happen in the next few years, but that's where there's a lot of impact on the industrial 4.0. Okay, but there's enough time for us to get there. This is at least my understanding that EMBB is a very mature field, and I am seeing a lot of applications on that. But URLLC, the low latency and more reliable communication, still standard has to evolve a bit. Okay, and the applications, I haven't seen too many applications on this regard which actually utilize this. Remote surgery, people say remote surgery. I don't think anyone is going to do remote surgery on 5G in the next decade. But I think a reasonable use case for India, for example, during the farming season, having tractors and farm equipment is one thing, but having drivers who can drive that with proper care and other things is a different thing. So one specific use case I believe that's going to come in India is not automated driving and not automated vehicles, but remote access to this vehicle, remote driving of these vehicles. This is where 5G is going to play a very important. For example, you can have a drone that is going to paint your building, but with an operator sitting down and working on it. Okay, so this is where 5G is going to get its URLLC and reliable and low latency part of 5G is going to be used, but a human is also going to be part of that chain. I think we are a couple of years away from seeing these kind of use cases, but the first use case that's going to come is mobile broadband.
It's obvious because it's largely going to be consumer and user driven, where URLCC and MIoT use cases, there's a lot of dependency on other enterprises, especially When we talk of ecosystem play, there's a whole host of application layer also coming into the foray. So it's pretty complex realizing those, and more importantly, realizing those at a scale, which is industrialization, right? And I think that's going to be the challenge. So, Mr. Ramaswamy, if I can come to you again, and I would like to hear your perspective on the organization readiness part of it. So operators are now claiming to be tech companies, right? If you go and talk to a CIO, I mean, there is no CIO. They have merged the CIO and CTO. It's now CTIO or Chief of Digital. Most operators, at least with whom I interact with, they would love to call themselves Chief Digital Officers or CTIOs rather than CIOs. Now, when you go and talk to a CIO, they say that, okay, we would like to be the tech enabler. So they would like to be an Amazon, or they would like to be a Netflix. That's the big wish list. And that's something which they're embanking upon with 5G as the infrastructure backbone. And they would be the aggregator of various technologies put together, making them an enabler of all technologies. Now, it's easier said than done for the operator, because the operator has traditionally always been a connectivity player. They have never traditionally been a tech company, and it requires a different DNA to be a tech company. So what is the organization readiness when it comes to this kind of, I'll ask the same question to Dave as well, in terms of the tall claims, if I may say, that, okay, we are going to be the enablers, we are going to be the system integrators going forward, and we will drive this whole change and implement these use cases and be the enablers of this whole transformation. What steps Tata Communications are taking towards that journey?
So the first thing that you need to sort of realize is this entire technology is built upon a complete software understanding, right? It is fairly major portion, maybe 90% of the entire development work that has happened around 5G. While it started a little bit with 4G, but the maturity of driving everything through software has happened with 5G coming in. So barring some very critical part like radios and antenna and a few other components, major part of the network is currently software. And telecom companies having run software technology for a long time for their own internal use, and also applications on cloud and hosting and other things. There is quite a lot of capability that has been built over a period of time by telecom companies in the software side. So that gives the first confidence, that you have run cloud communication, you have run hosting, you have been running your own large IT, etc. That gives a lot of confidence for you to come and do use that knowledge to run these technologies for the customer.
If I may just interject.
Yeah, sure.
So, running cloud and hosting data centers is, one aspect of it. But when it comes to application consolidation, when it comes to modernization, you mentioned monetization, right? And data monetization or any application monetization is a very complex service by nature. It's not a vanilla data center hosting or a cloud hosting service. It requires complexity in terms of understanding OpenShift APIs. It requires architectural know-how. It requires system integration prior experiences, which traditionally is not the DNA of an operator. It is a DNA of a company like maybe an IBM, maybe an Accenture, things like that. So how do you foresee that? Because they are coexisting with you and they are also willing to take a fair share of this pie.
So if you look at it, major part of the activities that are being done by, when I say telecom companies do it, okay, there is a partnership ecosystem that exists. Maybe the likes of the companies that you mentioned would probably be part of the ecosystem for telecom companies to support them to deliver what their services are. But the fundamental difference or the understanding what the operator has today of how software and the communication technology work together, that brings a lot of difference to an enterprise. When you serve an enterprise, how the communication technology runs has never been the botheration of an enterprise. So you wanted a connectivity, the telecom operator came and either laid a fiber or did something, they gave a connectivity, and after that your communication, your link is up and running and your application is running on that. So the application or the business did not bother much about how the telecom company enabled them to function till date, right? Whereas with 5G, the expectation is the communication technology and the IT of every customers of theirs are going to interact, number one, right? I think Dave mentioned about it some time back as to the applications and the networks being able to talk to each other and being able to communicate. And that is one digital enablement that telecom companies are going to be doing. It's not about the software migration from one version to the other, or how to implement cluster, containerization and things like that. And there are technology companies who will anyway enable them. The biggest difference I expect that the communication companies are going to do for their enterprise customers is that enabling the application use the network optimally. So depending upon what that requires, does it require high throughput? Does it require low latency? Does it require a higher, density of this one? What is the level of security that it requires, and so on? Depending upon the nature of what the application is, the telecom companies will be able to provide that network, and that is where they become the digital enabler, not necessarily replacing the software companies that have been helping them so far, right?
Right. So as a follow-up to that, Dave, if I may ask you, you mentioned BT Digital in your opening remarks, and I think that's the big ticket organization entity which is going to change the DNA of what traditional British Telecom we all knew over a long period of time. So I think BT Digital is the next generation company that you guys are embanking upon, especially with 5G transformation. What's the operating model DNA between a BT Digital and a traditional BT that is different? Point number one. And secondly, when it comes to the whole process readiness in trying to be the enabler, the fundamental change, at least what I would like to see when it comes to 5G ecosystem play, is this whole application modernization, monetization journey that every operator is trying to encash upon. And as a part of that, they have partners or SI companies together in this play. Is BT also embanking on a similar strategy where they're forcing this change? And if that's the reality, then where is the focus? Is the focus still within the OSS, BSS, or what we call as the application landscape, or it's focused more towards orchestration or OpenShift APIs, or what we call as the open digital architecture in the telco world?
Thank you. That's quite a long question. I think, coming back to kind of what I was saying earlier, and I think has just been said there as well, I think, I do think the networks in the digital space are very much need to coexist. The networks is doing this massive transformation of enabling the kind of 5G kind of technologies. The digital space is almost enabling the customers to actually access and get the best out of that. As we said before, 5G is programmable. As was just said before, it's actually tunable to allow people to get the best out of it, whether it's the right latency on demand, the right speed on demand, the right SLAs. I think all of these comments have been made by the panel so far. But the OSS and the enabling capability to actually do that in real time is an incredible, complex and big challenge to come together. And I think that's one of the big areas that our digital team are very focused on, is how do we actually shift the modernization, which was probably a very simple kind of provisioning mechanism, provision once and it, life stays the same for, however many years, to actually making much more of a real-time kind of interactive system, as you would expect from any kind of online digital retailer. I think we do need to remember that telcos are still, telecoms operators are still some of the biggest subscription services out there. And we shouldn't forget that actually our position maybe in the digital world, maybe we don't have necessarily the same digital kind of front end or image, which will come as part of this digital transformation. And that's a key part of the digital transformation. But actually as a solid base, we've actually got a foundation here of actually being a very large subscription service. We have more, you have more customers than, a Netflix or an Amazon or those kind of organizations, within a country. So the foundations are very strong. So the OSS side of that is very important in terms of how you develop it and how you can actually give access to these high-end capabilities of 5G. But we do need to remember that to do that level of complex programmable on-demand nature and being able to guarantee SLAs, whether it's latency or performance or speed versus the other users on that network. There is a cost to that, but there's an expectation that to give a KPI, we should be able to charge more for those kind of services as well. And that's not just the operator, but that's potentially also the end service and solution provider that might sit beyond it. So all of these are kind of enabling kind of future monetization options. And the mobile operators have been very good at kind of just managing kind of micro payment kind of solutions already as part of even kind of managing data bundles and data services. It is a step up. There's a huge opportunity to kind of evolve beyond there in what the services can do, but foundations still exist. And in terms of then the partnerships, you mentioned the kind of system integrators. I think in practice, you will get this will be quite a complex ecosystem. I mean, if you look at a smart factory as an example, it may have a 5-year or a 10-year life cycle in terms of how that factory evolves. And you have system integrators that are already involved in that kind of ecosystem that are very much involved in and kind of trying to drive efficiency and supporting with the technology. And it's very important that we actually sort of start working with partners to start kind of enabling and sort of seeding the foundations of where you can start getting benefits. So I see absolutely from a system integrators and a data sharing point of view, you will see at an enterprise level absolute working together. I think it will become absolutely necessary in order to scale and in order to grow.
Thanks, Dave. One of the other aspects I think we must also acknowledge is the organizational DNA mindset change. I think you can't have the same traditional leaders, the CXOs or the directors or the managers, owning up functions who believe in traditional communication connectivity services. That's also going to change. So organization DNA is very much an integral part to make 5G a success story for both operators as well as the vendors or the tech companies. And I think that's a reality. We all can talk of technology, we all can talk of enablement, we can talk of all the good things, but in reality, organization DNA is what it takes to make any use case or any particular industry a success story. And I think that's very important. So the leaders also need to open up. They need to have a bit more open outlook towards being an enabler of various use cases rather than being the sole owner of this connectivity service. I think that's a transition and a radical shift. We looked at the business model change, which is largely platform driven. We looked at the genesis and the origination of 5G, right from 3PP transition from 4G to 5G. I gave you a few random statistics in the beginning to give you a perspective of how much potential is really out there. We also looked at the operating model and what operators are doing to basically be the next generation company. What I really liked about both from Tata Comm and from BT, you acknowledge the fact that yes, you cannot be an overnight tech company and you would exist or coexist with a tech company, but you do have the DNA or the digital drive to make 5G a success story. So with that, I can close. I can come to the closing comments from Arnab, maybe.
I had a question, and I was actually asking Dr. Radhakrishnan also about that. What is the impact of the current geopolitics on the availability and the launch of 5G or the adoption of 5G in India? I would like to understand it. And I know China controls the chips, but what's the global view and maybe what's the local view?
Well, there is definitely an impact, and you can't say that there is no impact, and we'll be fooling ourselves in case you say that there is no impact. But at the same time, I see that various countries, the local governments have stepped up their. In fact, we heard from Colonel Kocher sometime back when he spoke about it. Dr. Kocher mentioned about that. So every country is sort of stepping up, some effort or the other. The type of effort may vary between countries, but there is an effort towards localization. There is an effort towards decentralization of dependency, so to say, and also trying to make it a little bit more widespread. The good part about 5G is there is a lot of work, there is software, and this country has excelled itself in software for over 3 decades almost, and hence that reduces the dependence. But still, there are definitely components that need to get into the network and to the device and the handheld devices and other IoT and other devices. So I think the more and more the countries start becoming divergent on their sourcing strategy, the better it would be. And I'm sure that we are doing it. I'm sure BT is doing it, and I'm sure world over all operators are doing the same thing. David may have something.
David, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. I think it's very important, at a national level, I think, to encourage development in the technologies and to encourage, the widening of the supplier ecosystem. I think that's incredibly important. We've seen a lot over the last couple of years, and it's growing rapidly. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there. You've talked about private network space as an example. That's a simpler ecosystem in its own right for organizations maybe to start in. It's very much more complex if you want to build a really very large scale, high capacity base stations, but certainly starting from simpler technologies or simpler solutions and dedicated solutions, more enterprise kind of led ones, would be a great starting position. And I encourage a lot more companies to get engaged in such things. But there is a wider kind of supply problem anyway, post-pandemic as well. We do need to recognize that even just chipset supply kind of does disrupt the supply and does potentially kind of slow things down. I think it's being well managed now. It's taken time. But the supply ecosystem has been a little bit fragile, should we say.
Thanks. You want to add something?
Just to add to this, till now we are talking about applications, all of us building applications on 5G. That's a very important use case. That's where a lot of money is going to be made. But there's something else that's happened in 5G, disaggregation. With the O-RAN coming into picture, parts of 5G has a lot of moving parts, but all of them are interop very well. So it gives us a great opportunity as a country to build some of these parts. Okay, so as Mr. Ramaswamy was pointing out, a lot of this is software. Of course, there's a lot of hardware also involved in it, but with this advent of O-RAN, disaggregation, it's a great opportunity for all the businesses to step into small parts of the 5G ecosystems, build them, and build together an enterprise solutions. So big operators, big MNCs, they will handle the bigger parts. The enterprise solutions, there's a huge market for smaller players to get into and build solutions.
Just as a closing thought, since you asked that question of geopolitics, I sit in a country where we are constantly receiving threats from the other side of the Baltics, where we can be bombarded, and I keep getting alarm messages of how to hide in a bunker, how to run faster and hide myself. So in the present state where Europe is right now, I believe a lot of the operators, not just BT or Vodafone or Telefonica or Telia, it's from Sweden. Most telcos are taking defense services or defense related use cases very seriously. And with the volatility that really exists in present geopolitics, I think 5G is going to be not for security only, just for our data only. It's going to be the differential, which can really be a foolproof tech, if I may say so, much more than maybe what cloud has delivered in the next couple of years. So we need to see that a large part of that would be driven by the URLCC and the MIOT, not towards the EMBB, because we obviously tend to focus more on EMBB because it's consumer driven. That's where I made that point. So with that, I think we are maxed out on time. So I'll bring this session to a close. Thank you very much to all the panelists for your participation. Thank you.
Before we close the session, we would request Mr. Arnob Basu to please present tokens of our appreciation to our speakers. Shankulpito, we would request you to hand it over to Mr. Basu, and Mr. Basu is requested to please present to our speakers. Just to acknowledge that there's a plant which is provided by the Karmyog Plant Library, as I mentioned after the opening session, that it is an IoT-based communication platform which integrates nature and learning. And there's a honey. The Bengal Chamber has procured it from our startup, which has created an AI-enabled bee corridor at Eco Park in Rajarhat, and glasses provided by our networking partner, Carlsberg. And as we are coming to the closure of this session, we would like to present to you another video from one of our sponsors.
With connectivity and applications, data usage is growing exponentially. Industries are accelerating the integration of their value chain, leveraging technologies like automation with AI and analytics, massively connected resources, agility of response, and better security. Introducing Tata Communications private 5G networks, designed to deliver end-to-end flexible, robust, and programmable connectivity solution for any industry. Solution is integrated with Edge Cloud to deploy industry-grade mission-critical applications, secured enterprise connectivity and data, and deployed and managed using our global footprint. Tata Communications private 5G solution provides you with seamless, low latency, and highly reliable network, zero-touch automation and orchestration, zero trust security, optimized total cost of ownership, and on-demand scalability. With our solution, we build comprehensive use cases and innovative business solutions across industries such as smart manufacturing, warehousing, ports, digital campuses, and many more. With our in-depth domain expertise, we help you achieve the desired business outcomes. Contact Tata Communications today.